Hello, everybody. Welcome to our session today, Social Business Wales' Network. And today's session is all about diversification. So thank you very much to everyone for joining us. Social Business Wales is a business support programme. You may already be clients of ours receiving our support. And it's made up of a consortium of different businesses. So that includes Compass, where I'm Elizabeth, and my colleague Rodri is here as well. And today's session will be led by our colleague Rob, who's a business advisor. He's worked with lots of businesses over the years, maybe some of you, and he's going to lead us through the session on diversification. And one of our consortium members is also here. I think that's Sarah from WCVA. So nice to see you, Sarah. And we have other partners as well on Social Business Wales. That includes DTA Wales, Social Firms Wales, Unlimited. So they're all there to lead businesses and give them the support they need to thrive as social enterprises. And it's funded by the Welsh Government. So in a second, I'm going to hand over to Rob to lead the session. So just to let you know, we all the information from today will be on a Padlet. So those of you who've been before will have seen our Padlets. But it's just like a digital notebook where we put all the information together. So the presentation will be on there and then a recording of this session as well. We've also got a list of the businesses attending today on there. For those of you who did pop your website in the link to me, I've put your website on there as well, so you can see a little bit about each other's businesses, hopefully. Um, so I hope that's useful for you. I think we're going to try and pop that link to the Padlet in the chat. As Rob's going through the presentation, if there's anything you haven't heard correctly or needs a bit of clarity, please just pop that in the chat. And then Rob's going to take questions at the end. So we'll try and get through within the hour, but it may go a bit over for the discussion afterwards, if that's okay. But if anyone does need to leave on the dot at 12, just pop that in the chat. That's fine. So have we forgotten anything there, Rodri? Are we okay to go?
We're all good. Padlet is there. So, yeah, everyone's
Okay.
looking thrilled to get started. So let's crack on.
Okay. Thank you. Over to you then, Rob. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth, and thanks for the introduction. Morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. So I'm going to share my screen in a few moments, and we're going to work through a presentation. But whilst I do that, I've had a few warnings this morning on Zoom about an unstable connection. So I'm just going to switch my camera off for that period, just in case I lose you at all, just so that we can keep the call going. And like Elizabeth said, if you have got any questions, please pop it in the chat, and we'll do our best to work through them either as we go through or at the end, because we have got some time at the end to take any questions. And also, if I could ask you to all keep your microphones on mute, that just helps with any background noise while we go through the presentation. So I hope you enjoy the session, and I'll share my screen in 1 second. Okay, let's pop that into full screen. Bear with me a second there. I'll share that again. Make sure that we've got the right one. Technology is wonderful when it works. Okay, so as Elizabeth said, my name is Rob Hughes, and I work as a business consultant on the Social Business Wales programme. I am predominantly based in North Wales, so I work and look after the third sector businesses within the counties of Anglesey and Gwynedd. But more recently, our work has, we've been supporting other counties in Wales, and I'm one of the Welsh speakers on the programme. So I'm also responsible for Welsh delivery within the Social Business Wales area throughout the whole of Wales. So a welcome to the session then, and some of the objectives that we're going to cover within the session this morning. So we're going to look at the question as to why diversification matters. And I'm hoping with the exercise that we've put in place and the information that we've got there, that you're able to take away from this today some diversification matters that you can bring into your own business. And hopefully those exercises will help with you being able to cover that. So understand the benefits of reducing reliance on a single source of income. And we're also going to look at different approaches to diversification. So we're going to explore a range of practical options that are available to you. And we're going to look at mapping what you've already got within your business. So mapping your skill sets, mapping the assets that you've got, and mapping the areas of work that you're already involved in and how that can help diversification within your business. And then hopefully then towards the end of the session, you'll start to have an idea around identifying opportunities that are available. So that mapping will allow you to recognize what you've already got within your organization. So whether it's existing skills, assets, and knowledge, and how maybe you could better use those opportunities or assets within your business to look at diversification and increasing that. And also, it's important that we keep in mind today that we reality check these ideas. So making sure that those opportunities are assessed realistically. And we will look at potential barriers as well. So towards the end, we'll look at what barriers there are within your business and how to potentially overcome them by doing that sort of reality check. And action planning. So within the chat, if you can have a quick look, you'll see the link there for the Padlet. And as a takeaway from this session today, I've put together a workbook. So we will share the presentation with you. So you'll have access to all the slides and the information that's presented, but also within that workbook, there's a lot of action planning in there. There's prompts and questions and exercises that will allow you to look at opportunities and approaches to diversification and that reality checking as well. I'm happy for you to, we won't go into too much detail with that workbook in the session because I'm conscious we've only really got 90 minutes of your time. But I'm happy for you to open that workbook up now if you want to and have that open alongside you, because when we go into some of the exercises later on, there are some questions there that are pertinent to the exercises that we do within the slides. So if you could have a quick look at that and have that open if you feel that you want to do that. So from the action planning then, hopefully at the end of this session, you will have developed some practical next steps that you can take away and start working on that within your business. So before we start then, we're going to look at a quick reflection exercise, and I want you to do this individually. So we're not going to do breakout rooms today. We're just going to do individual exercises because I think diversification is quite specific to your business. So if you were to work in bigger groups, then I think sometimes maybe some of those thought trails and those ideas can get lost. So it's a quick sort of solo reflection. So thinking about your organization then, if your largest source of income disappeared tomorrow, what impact would that have on your business and your organization? So some examples then, would it have little impact, do you think? Could it cause some challenges? Or could it significantly affect any of your operations? So if you could just have a quick think about that, about your approach really. I mean, you might be coming to this today as an organization that is already quite diversely, you have a number of income routes into the business and possibly you're not. So hopefully we've got quite a mixed bag of attendees here today that have got, different approaches to their sources of income. And if you could pop some of them in the chat for me, just so I can have a look. I think we've got a few questions there about the Padlet link. I think it's quite fresh in the chat, right at the very top. I think Rodri shared it.
Yeah, so just to help anyone who's stuck with the Padlet, if you open it and then there'll be three little dots somewhere, and I think you just download it and then it should open as a Word document. So if you've got Word, that's okay. But oh yeah, Philip has said, and if anyone's struggling, just let me know and I can try and email it to you as a Word document. Okay, thanks. But you can also just make notes. You don't have to use the workbook, but thanks.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, and the reason we've got it there as a Word document, I should have explained that at the start really, is that it is there to be used as a working document for you. So by putting it into a PDF, sometimes it's difficult to go back in and edit it. So I thought it was easy to have as a Word document, and you can then work on that over the coming weeks and months as you work through the session today and what you will take away from it. So I'm just having a quick look then. We've got some responses coming in, just so I can get an idea of where you're all coming from. So there's a few responses here that say that it would significantly affect operations, knock-on effect on staffing costs. Okay, so that gives me an idea then that a number of you are obviously coming to this session looking at diversification as the next route within your business, which is good to see, and hopefully you'll get a lot of information from this session today, which will help you along the way with that sort of thought process. Okay, so we will move on then, and we'll start looking at why diversification matters. So obviously we are in a changing environment. As you know, there are changes all around us all the time. Lots of changes in government, lots of changes in funding, lots of changes in local area priorities. And, you know, as third sector organizations, it can be quite difficult to react to those changes. So the environment does have a big part to play on that. So that, you know, there are pressures, obviously funding uncertainty. We've had a lot of changes in Welsh Government recently with a new First Minister and a new government, and also, you know, the resignation of the Prime Minister the other day in Westminster. So that may pose some changes as well to local authority. So funding uncertainty is a big one. And in my role more recently in the last 2 years, I would say that third sector funding from the National Lottery, for example, it has become a lot more competitive, and I do deal with a lot more requests from clients where they've been turned down for grant funding. So that creates a lot of uncertainty as well. There are those rising operating costs, as we know. You know, energy costs are high, staff costs are high, products and services costs are high. So, you know, that's always going to be a burden that we're going to have to work with when looking at diversification. And as I said, the increased competition for grants, I don't know whether it's been fueled by the COVID pandemic in 2020, where we saw probably a bit of a surge in increase the competition, but hopefully that will start to come back as we get some stability with the new Welsh Government in place and they start putting their policies together and we start to understand what their kind of work is towards the third sector. And hopefully with that in mind, that increased competition will reduce for grants in years to come. But nevertheless, as it currently stands, it is, you know, a changing environment for us and something that we have to be aware of. There are growing demands for services in the local area, you know, communities of interest that you work with. There are going to always be growing demands for particular services. And recruitment and retention challenges, you know, keeping good people in jobs is always going to be a challenge. And the economic uncertainty, as we know, that continues to grow and creates pressure on the third sector and on your businesses. So when we think about diversification, then it is a little bit more than income. You know, having diversification can help your organization to reduce that reliance on a single income source, whether it's grant, you know, completely grant funded, or whether you have paid for services in there or trading income. It does build that resilience against change, and it gives you that greater financial flexibility. So there's an exercise that I carry out with my clients when we go through, especially if they're a brand new social enterprise, and we go through the first pieces of work would be business planning and funding strategy. But within that, we have an underpinning exercise where we look at a kind of exercise to be non-grant dependent. And in that, we map what they would have in terms of assets and services and whether they can have some trading income there. So I like to promote the sort of 70-30% split. So 70% trading income and 30% grant income. Now, I understand obviously in some industries and some businesses that's not viable, but we do try to look at that kind of differentiated approach and having that resilience against change to make sure that you've got that financial flexibility. And also by undertaking the assessment for diversification, it allows you to make better use of the existing assets and skills that you've got by mapping them and understanding them more fully. And then that does then support that long-term sustainability within your business. So let's take a little bit of a moment to think then and understanding your current position. I know you've put some things in there in the chat, but I think the key question from today's session is how diversified are you already within your business? So before you start exploring any new opportunities, it can be useful for you to understand where your current income comes from. So, take a moment after this session to consider how many income streams do you currently have, and which one is the largest source of income, and what percentage of that income comes from that large source. And if that disappears, obviously, what impact would it have? We have looked at that in the chat, but hopefully you'll be able to start to put a bit more meat on the bones of these questions as we go through the session and put things for consideration. So we're going to go back now into another reflection activity. I'd like to keep you busy this morning. So I'd like you to take a couple of minutes just to think about, where does your organization's income come from as it currently stands today? So some examples then, is it predominantly grants and donations if you're a charitable structure? Do you have any sponsorship that comes in? Do you have any fundraising if you're a charitable structure again? Do you have any room hire? So have you got any sort of trading income or any other earned income? And any contract work that you might do, whether you work for the local authority or any other sort of social enterprises or private businesses that you work with? And do you have any trading income? So just take a couple of minutes to think about, where does your income come from today and how diversified is that route of income? And do you have any membership? So if you are, I don't know if you're a cooperative or you have any memberships there or paid memberships, or within your business, do you have any memberships, any groups of memberships and any income that comes in from that? And then the discussion question there, on the back of looking at those examples, do you think that your organization is highly diversified, somewhat diversified, or heavily reliant on one or two income sources? So if you take a couple of minutes just to reflect on that, and then if you could pop in the chat for me whether you think your organization is highly diversified, somewhat diversified, or heavily reliant on one or two income sources. I'll give you a couple of minutes. I'll set a timer so I can keep a track on that. And then if you could just start popping your responses in the chat for me so I can see them.
Got a few responses there, Rob. Can you see those?
Yeah, I was just reading through that. There's a couple that I'm going to discuss. Yeah, some interesting responses there. I can see that a lot of you are saying that you're heavily reliant on a couple of income sources, solely reliant on weekly class fees, reliant on one large grant, reliant on two income sources. So the good news is you're in the right session, because today, at the end of it, you can hopefully take away a lot of advice on how to become less reliant on one or two or three different income sources. And hopefully, in the future, you can diversify that to be 4 or 5 different income sources. There were a couple of comments there that I missed while I was presenting that slide. Julian says that AI is having a huge impact on funding, positive or negative effect. So yeah, AI isn't something that I've put in this presentation, but I am quite aware that a lot of clients have started using it to research grants and to help them write their sort of grant applications, to write their business plans and their funding strategies if we don't do them for them. So there is that huge impact in terms of the difference probably in the quality of the applications, the difference in the information that's going into it. Was that the point that you were making, Philippa? And I think Julian has also commented on that it's having, I would say that's probably the impact that AI is having on funding from my perspective as a business consultant. And I can also see Liz's comment there on competition for grants, affected by the way in which government bodies are approaching the sector with contracts for services as opposed to grant applications. So yeah, so a lot of it falls inside and outside of the scope of VAT. Yeah, that's an interesting point, Liz. Thanks for popping that in the chat. Okay, yeah, I do think without going off the point there, but probably this is another session in terms of AI in the third sector. But yeah, it is a big area of work really, where people are using AI to write applications, and it is having possibly a negative effect on that. Okay. So thank you for taking the time to that reflection activity. We're going to move on now to looking at the different routes to diversification. So there are a number of routes, but I've tried within this presentation, because I knew we weren't, we had a set amount of time. I've pinpointed it down to the 4 most important, or the ones, in my opinion, that I think are the most important. So diversification doesn't always mean starting something completely new. There are many ways within your organization that you can diversify, and there are sort of 4 common approaches. So new customers or audiences, so providing existing products or services that you're already delivering to a different audience. So for example, if you are delivering workshops, is there a possibility that you can deliver those same workshops to a new sector, or expanding into new geographical area with services that you provide? Let's say, for example, you deliver a service in the county of Gwynedd. Are you able to then deliver that service in the county of Conwy, which is the next county? Which means that the costs aren't too high, because the travel wouldn't be too bad for your staff. But you already have that service in place, which means it should be embedded within your business. And also, if you're selling products to customers, are you able to target a different customer group? So let's say, for example, later on in the presentation, we've got a client case study of a community kitchen. And within there, there's lots of ideas around how they targeted different customer groups, but providing the same product and service to them. And that was one of their biggest achievements within diversification. So just have a think, really, if there are new customers or audiences that you can tap into with what you've already got. And the second one then brings us nicely on to new products or services. So if you were in a position where you thought we could develop something new, can you do it based on the existing expertise that you've got internally? So let's say, for example, you provide training programs. Can you develop a new element of that training program with what you've already got. And also within businesses, without really realizing it, there are lots of experts probably within your teams of staff, within your teams of directors. Do you have the capacity to start providing paid for consultancy services using that expertise that you have within the business? Because that now, especially since 2020, in my experience as a business consultant, lots of new social enterprises are always looking to the older social enterprises that are in the same sector as them for consultancy services. I know it's something that we do within Social Business Wales when we have the funding available. We'll always look for new consultants to join our network. Can you use the skills and the expertise that you've already got or you've learned over the years that you've been within the business to provide paid for consultancy services? And the nice thing about it now is, the evolution of Zoom and Teams and digital documents, you're able to do that quite effectively to sort of bigger groups in a one-to-many setting using Zoom, which means that the costs are lower for you. So it could be quite a big win that if you're able to look at consultancy services within your business. And also, are you able then on the back of that, with that expertise and the learning that you've got within the business, there's a big demand, certainly in the private sector, for digital resources. So people are always looking for guidebooks, pro formas, templates, learning documents, online courses. And it's an evergreen area, this digital resources, because once you've developed something once and you've got it saved there in the format of, let's say, a PDF or a digital course or a range of videos, training videos, it's evergreen, because once you've done it once, then you can continue to sell it. So if you are, let's say, for example, a training provider, that's predominantly face-to-face, could you turn some of that learning into a digital resource and sell it online as well to the social enterprises of the private sector, or even private customers who want to get into the type of work that you do, or the networks that you work with? So digital resources is a big one, and it is really that is an evergreen income source. And then on the back of that, then if you're looking at a new service, could you do events? So let's say, for example, you were a food business. Could you provide catering for a food festival or anything like that, something that you've not done before, where you know that you've got good footfall, it's a local event embedded within your local community of interest that happens on an annual basis? Could you attend that event then to promote the business, but also sell some of the food to make some income for it? So there's a lot of ideas around new products or services there. The next one is an interesting one, and this is where we start looking at the mapping. So better use of existing assets. So can you generate even more value from the assets that you've already got? So let's say, for example, you've got a building that has a number of rooms that are used by yourselves only on certain days of the week, but then empty on other days of the week. Are you able to hire those rooms out to groups or individuals? Is there any specialist equipment that you use within your business that is only used on certain days of the week and stands still on other days of the week? Are you able to hire that out? With it being a specialist equipment that maybe not many people can hire from general hire places. Do you have any land or buildings available to you or close by or as part of your assets? Are you able to make the most of the buildings and the land there? I mean, the example that we've got of the case study later on does show you how this business diversified into using the land that they had next to the business centre that they were based in to turn it into a community garden. And also within your business, do you have any specialist vehicles? So let's say, for example, they are specialist food vehicles or specially adapted vehicles for people with certain needs, but they're only used on certain days of the week and they stand still on other days of the week. Are you able to hire those vehicles out on the days that they're not used to create that income bank? And we go back there then to the last one, specialist knowledge. I think we covered that in point number 2, where you would use any sort of specialist knowledge within your business, whether it's on the board of directors, other staff members that you've got, or if there are certain things that you've developed over time in the business as you've responded to needs of your local area or your customer group, and you've had to retrain some of your staff to be specialists in certain areas of work, can you then kind of sell that specialist knowledge to other new social enterprises or private businesses in the similar sector? So again, that's evergreen. When I said about the digital assets, it's an evergreen area, really, consultancy and specialist knowledge, because you're able to replicate what you know really on numerous occasions. And by using Zoom and Teams now, it does make it a lot easier to get to other people in different parts of the country, or indeed different parts of the world. You can do these one-to-many sessions now that are quite valuable for the participants, and also valuable for you within your business. And then the fourth one then, partnerships and collaboration. So I'm sure that you all work in partnership and collaboration with groups and businesses and individuals and local authorities, but can you work even further to create new opportunities in partnership or collaboration? So some examples then, can you work together with other similar social enterprises on joint projects to reduce the cost but increase that kind of social impact and increase the work? Can you create a consortium? If you were bidding for a grant or a piece of work, could you create a consortium where there's a number of social enterprises with similar outcomes? And then from that consortium bid, then what you likely will see will happen is you come into a territory of shared services, where you deliver part of the services as kind of shared across a number of businesses, and then that then would give you that kind of collaborative delivery. So partnerships and collaboration is one not to be overlooked. Obviously, there's a lot of work behind this. Creating a consortium isn't something you can do overnight, and it has to be something that fits in with your business and your mission and vision. But it is an important one, and I think it is worth spending some time to look at how collaboratively you work within the partnership space. Okay, so before we come on to this reflection question, I'm just going to have another quick look at the chat just to make sure that I've not missed anything. Okay. Consultancy and equipment hire are on your horizon of interest, Julian. That's good to hear. Okay, yeah. If you haven't got assets, then obviously that point doesn't work for you. But there are other things within then. It'll be interesting when we come on to the next few slides, when we look at the case study of the business, because I think that's quite, well, for me, it was quite an eye-opener. And I always use this in sessions when we look at diversification, because the starting story of that business is they started with pretty much nothing, just providing food, taking surplus food from the supermarkets. And I'll show you in a few minutes how they've grown to being, quite big social enterprises. So a quick reflection question then, and we're going to use the chat again. Which one of those four approaches feels most relevant and possibly most achievable to you in your organization? So if you take a minute just to have a think, and if you're comfortable to pop it in the chat, please do so, and we'll have a look at that again, and we'll tackle some of those questions. I was just going to come on to your comment there, Cindy, where you have put there that you have specialist knowledge, but you can train unless people are in paid work for 16 hours a week, but you can't pay them because you have no money. Are you thinking there about the apprenticeship, so the funded apprenticeship or the funded training model that local colleges would provide, but they need the learners to be in paid employments for 16 hours a week? Yeah, thanks for your comment there, Philippa, about offering corporate training. I mean, offering corporate training, obviously, it needs to fit in, like I said earlier on, it needs to be something that fits in with your business and something that you can do that, as Philip outlines there about draining resources on coaching time, admin time, and project time. You need to make sure that it is a viable route for you. And hopefully this session will allow you to be able to network that really and look at the options that are available to you.
Hi, can I just answer your question?
Yeah, you can do. I was just going to ask you to unmute. It's probably easier if you tell me, then pop it in the chat.
Yeah, so we have Jackie here, who's our nursery director, who can teach level 1 to 5 in childcare. But the Welsh government stipulates that she can't teach anyone unless they're in 16 hours of paid work. And we have about like 30 volunteers who want to do their level 2 or 3 in childcare, but they can't because we can't afford to pay them, even though we have the person who can train them.
Okay. Yeah.
And they can't pay for the training because they're volunteers, they have no money.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? So that's a Welsh government rule specifically for
Level 2
2
and
and 3
3
in childcare. Yeah.
And 4 and 5 as well. So
Okay. Yeah, leave that one with me. I mean, my consultant was in further education, higher education, and apprenticeship. So it's interesting to see how things have changed over the years. I mean, it's been many years since I've been in that role. So yeah, I don't have a clear answer for you there, but I can look into that to see whether there's a way around. If there's a different way that you can do that, whether it's a non-accredited. I mean, with childcare, I get that it needs to be accredited learning for it to be good quality. But is there anything around that you can do
no,
that's accredited?
at the moment, Jackie teaches level 1 at Menfa, and it's free for people to attend. But you're not allowed to work in a nursery unless you have level 2 or 3 in childcare.
Okay.
So in order to get your level 2 or 3, you have to be in paid work as an apprentice somewhere, but no one's going to hire someone that they don't know to do a year-long or year-and-a-half-long course in order to get their level 2 in childcare. Even though the Welsh government needs more people to work in childcare, they can't hire them because they don't have the qualifications, because no one's going to hire them. It's like a circle that's endless.
Yeah. It's like yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, I don't have a clear answer for you there. Obviously, it's going into Welsh government rules, and yeah, possibly that wouldn't work for your business then, because you have to have that, that specific training in order for these people to progress into paid work as, apprentice leavers. Okay, so there's a lot of things coming back there in the chat, which is nice to see. Some of you are thinking about these as consideration, but I see the challenges as well, which is good, because it gives me a better understanding as to where you're coming from. Okay, so let's return then to the presentation. Like I said, we're going to have some time, hopefully, at the end to be able to go through some questions as well, or any reflections you wanted to make before you leave the session. Okay, so thank you for working on that for me. So we're going to go into another reflective exercise again now, looking at diversification opportunities. So this grid will be available within the presentation for you to use again, and I think it is also in the workbook. So there are 4 key areas then that I want you to look at in terms of considering opportunities. So the first one is, what are you good at within the business? So think about things like skills and experience, knowledge, reputation, and the relationships that you currently and already have. What assets do you already have? So things like buildings, equipment, vehicles, land, digital assets, networks, and I should have put in there as well, people, your staff and your specialist teams. They are a big asset within your business. The third one then, what opportunities might exist? So generate as many ideas as possible, whether you've been thinking about this before the session today, or whether over the last sort of half an hour, some things have started to pop into your head in terms of the opportunities that are in existence. And then the fourth one then, which idea appears most realistic? So what out of those opportunities, what idea could you realistically explore within the next 6 to 12 months? So if you take another couple of minutes just to start jotting things down on this grid, I'm happy for you to do that on a plain piece of paper if you want, if that's easier. And then we'll leave that with you. What we won't do is we won't go into that in too much detail, because obviously this is a piece of work that you can take away and start thinking about within your business. So I'll set another timer for a couple of minutes for you to have a look at that, and then we'll come back then and we will move on to the example case study. Okay, so we've had a few minutes there. Hopefully you've had a chance to make a start on that grid and look at the 4 areas. We can come back to this at the end as well if you've got questions around these 4 areas, or if you wanted to put some of those ideas to the rest of the group. And if anybody in the group has got any suggestions, I'd be happy to do that towards the end. So to bring this to life then, I thought it was a good idea to tell you a little bit about an example business of mine in Gwynedd. And I've had their permission to share this, but all they've asked is that the name is anonymized for now, because some of the things in here are still work in progress. So the partnerships and the new market work, the orange and the blue boxes there are still ongoing. So they had just asked for me to anonymize it whilst those pieces of work go through. So to give you a little bit of history then into Community Kitchen, they started as a community kitchen in Gwynedd, preparing affordable, nutritious meals using surplus food from the supermarkets and supporting food banks. So they started out with their key assets. They had the commercial kitchen within a business centre. They had skilled staff and volunteers. They had that strong community relationship. They were a trusted and well-known local brand within the town that they were situated, and they did have that community building aspect within their business. And their mission when they started, and still their mission today, is to reduce food waste to support local people through affordable community meals. So they started by preparing those affordable, nutritious meals using surplus food that they would get from the local supermarkets. And from there then, by doing a mapping exercise on the back of their core activity, they looked at their skills and expertise, and how they could better use what they already had. So the 4 blue boxes on the top there is what came from the mapping exercise that they did of their skills and expertise. And they are in development now, looking at cookery courses and workshops, so providing hands-on courses for all ages on budget cooking, healthy eating and reducing food waste. Obviously, having that connection with the local supermarkets better allows them to, drive the message of reducing food waste, because that's everything about their business. They're taking that, what would necessarily become waste within the supermarkets, and turn it into good, healthy food for the community. Then on the back of that, then they looked at providing food hygiene training. So they became accredited to deliver level 2 food hygiene certification courses for individuals who are in the local college, but also for local food businesses as well. So that area of their business has started to thrive recently because they're able to offer it in person and online. So it goes back to what I said there about the digital assets. They capitalized on using the digital aspect within the food hygiene training. And that means that they're able to sell it outside of the local area. Now, they were lucky in the building that they were situated. They had the kitchen to start off with, and then they were offered more rooms. So they were offered the room that was next to the kitchen, which meant they were able to knock through and turn that into a community cafe. So now they have a pay-as-you-feel cafe, which is open to the public, and it helps them to serve hot meals, drinks, and cakes. But it allows them then to have zero waste, because what they don't use within the affordable nutritious meals and the surplus food, they're able to use that and sell that then in the community cafe. Then on the back of that, one afternoon, they had quite a large corporate group come in and ask them if they could provide a buffet for them the following week. And they then sort of saw that as an opportunity in providing outside catering services, because they already had the commercial kitchen, they already had the food coming in, they already had the cafe aspect. So it was a natural progression for them to provide catering for meetings, events, and celebrations, still using that fresh, locally sourced ingredients. And within that service, then the next stage that they're looking at is providing catering services to small scale weddings and events away from your kind of general corporate and meeting clientele. So those 4 top blue boxes was the outcome of them mapping their skills and expertise. And the next piece of work that they did was they mapped their assets and resources and came to an understanding of how they could better use what they already had. So as they were preparing meals anyway for the cafe and the outside catering, and the food that they had within the cookery courses, they then moved into meal box subscriptions, where they send out weekly meal boxes with affordable, healthy ingredients and easy recipes, predominantly for the sort of elder generation within the town that they're based in. But on the back of that, then there was demand for frozen ready meals, because the older people were using, I won't name any names, they were using some private companies that were quite expensive, and Come Community Kitchen realised that they could do the frozen ready meals of better quality for a lower price. So they've now bought that in as an extra service, a subscription service, as a bolt-on to the meal box subscription. And they make that within the kitchen. And because it is a commercial kitchen that's already accredited by the Food Standards Agency, they're able to do that quite effectively. And then as they grew within their space, within the business centre, they were offered more rooms. So as more rooms became vacant, the landlord offered them more space, and they then looked at hiring those rooms out to community space for meetings, training groups, and private events. So that goes hand in hand with their outside catering service. So if they have a group, they could host their buffet there. They're able now to offer them the food as well as part of the room hire. And then going back then to what we spoke about there in terms of digital resources, they are currently working on creating a digital space for downloadable recipe kits, meal plans, and home cooking on a budget tip cards. So they are now starting to move into that digital space of selling recipe packs and resources. And then The next area of work that they're working on now is sort of looking at or reaching to new customer groups and new markets. So they're looking at corporate team days and cooking experiences because they already have the kitchen and the cookery school there. And they're thinking that they can, provide team building sessions and social impact volunteering days for local businesses. And with that in mind, then with their ethos of reducing food waste and providing affordable, healthy food, they're now starting to look at partnership working with the local school and providing some healthy eating and cooking workshops within the 2 local schools that are in the town where they're based. And then on the back of that, then they're looking at their partnership work, so expanding it further with local producers, supermarkets and charities to secure more surplus food, because obviously with all of these operations, the demand for their food is ever increasing. So they have to look at, increasing their partnership to be able to bring in more food surplus. And I said earlier on about they were lucky that they had a piece of land close by to the business centre that they were housed in, and they were able to open up I think they opened last week actually, a community garden and a growing project. So within there, they've got spaces, allotment spaces for local people, but they also have sort of growing sessions, learning sessions of a Saturday morning, where they have a couple of community gardeners who show them, kind of polytunnel setups and growing in the ground and different things like that. So, this one is a nice project to share with you. It's a nice business, and it just shows you really the power of where they start enter here. By mapping their skills and expertise, their assets and resources, they were able to diversify quite widely in the blue and the purple boxes, their business. And on the back of that diversification, the digital resources there could become an evergreen income source for them. But on the back of the blue and the purple exercise there within their business and the diversification, they're now looking at new markets, which is, corporate team days could be quite a big one. The school sessions, obviously, that's a nice partnership work, and that could become evergreen, so long as there's funding there for the school to be able to pay for that. And then the partnership work, increasing their partnerships with the local area and tackling that food surplus and food waste, and having that external community garden as well is always an interesting one. But, to be fair to them, they've always, at the bottom there, they've always put that their impact is always to have more income streams. So that lowers the risk and gives them greater resilience. But also, they're keen to keep on providing that impact for their local community. So a nice case study to share with you there, just to show you that it is possible. I've been working with this business now for 6 years. So they were incorporated back in 2020. Yes, 6 years, 2020. Wow, that time's gone quick. But, they've been on quite a big growth journey. But it just shows you really by putting this up on screen that it is possible to start with the core activity idea, and by carrying out that mapping and looking at it realistically within your business, it is possible to diversify quite widely. Okay, so that brings us nicely on to reality checking the idea then. So as we've seen in the chat there, not every good idea is the right idea. And I would stress that point to you today, that before investing any of your time and your resources, it is important that you test these ideas realistically before moving them forward. And some key questions on the screen here then to keep in mind. Always make sure that the idea fits in with your purpose and values and creates part of your mission as a business. Is there a demand? So is there a genuine market for it, a genuine need and a genuine demand for the idea you're thinking about? Do you have the skills, time and resources to deliver it within a capacity as a team? And also the most important, or the two most important one, are obviously the financial viability. So you've got to make sure that it'll generate enough income or value to justify the effort. There's no point carrying any idea forward if it's going to just create a loss. And making sure that you manage the risk, as I'm sure you do anyway within your business planning. I'm sure you've got risk assessments in place for any, eventualities, loss of income, or things that go wrong within the business. Just make sure that any new ideas of diversification form part of that risk assessment within the business. And this grid, I'm pretty sure, is within the workbook as well. So you can, use the grid there to pose those questions to yourselves and the rest of the board when you do start discussing your diversification ideas. Okay, so the last reflection activity then within the session, because I'm conscious that we're coming up to midday and we're supposed to finish at 12:30, so I want to keep some time at the end as well for us to have any questions and answers. So I'm going to make this reflection activity a takeaway for you. So think about one idea that emerged from today's discussion. If there's anything that is, quite strong within your mind, which of those areas feels the strongest for you, and which area might need further exploration. So I'd like you to take that away to do after the session. And if you look in the workbook, these questions are repeated in there so that you can start jotting your ideas down within the workbook. So let's look next then at any common barriers to diversification. So what gets in the way usually? So many organizations recognize the need to diversify, but it can be challenging to take action. We have seen that in the chat this morning. There are challenges, and I've outlined them in the first few slides, but there are ways around them. So some of the common barriers then, obviously, is lack of time, limited staff or volunteer capacity, lack of confidence, access to funding or investment. So the point there about the training in the childcare setting, funding, lack of access to funding is an issue there. Skills or knowledge gaps, uncertainty about the demand, fear of failure or getting it wrong, competing priorities. So diversification within a business is always kind of thought about as a secondary priority, because the main priority is delivering the service that you've already got. When you open your door every morning and your customers are coming in, that's your priority. So diversification will always come second to that. And also there, looking at these barriers, a lot of these can be sort of targeted and some of them can be reduced, and that's what we're going to look at next in turning those ideas into action and, starting small, piloting them. So you don't have to start big with diversification. There are many diversification activities that will start as a small test rather than a major investment. Now, if you go back to the Clum Community Kitchen example I showed earlier on in the case study, they did many of those steps. They started as a pilot. So the cookery courses, they started as a 2-hour Saturday morning pilot for 6 months. The schools groups that they're going to be working with, they're piloting on that now. The growing project, they piloted using raised beds outside the building. So they had a couple of raised beds and they just had short 1-hour sessions on a Monday afternoon. And they did that for about 6 months before they actually took on the piece of land and invested into it. So do consider piloting and testing it out on small scale first. And also, can you partner up? So are there any other organizations that sit alongside you that you work with that can help share the risk, skills or resources? That's always an interesting one if you've got an organization that has similar resources that you can share. So if you need any specialist equipment, then that obviously eases that burden and allows you to pilot it quite cost effectively. And also start with what you've got. So do an assessment of what's around you within your business right now. Look at the assets that you've already got, and can you merge any of those into a new idea? Can you use those assets to support the pilot of a new idea? And the most important one on the end there is that you continue to learn as you go. So what can you test before committing significant time and money? But also document the journey. Take photographs, put together your case study, prove the social impact from the pilot and prove that actually it is worth the effort and worth the return on the income. That way then, if you are looking at any grant funding applications beyond the pilot stage of any sort of ideas or projects that you've got within diversification, the more learning and advice that you've got there, whether it's photographs, it's case studies, it's financial documentation, it just makes that process easier when you come to actually putting it together, because you've got proof there that the pilot actually works. So action planning then. How do you turn those ideas into action? So I'd like you to just take a few minutes to reflect on the discussion that we've had this morning, and just maybe identify one opportunity you'd like to explore further within your business over the next few months. And look at the things within the 5 boxes here. So opportunities then, what diversification idea would you like to explore? First steps, what action could you take within the next 2 to 4 weeks? Who do you need to get to be involved in this? Do you need to speak to board members, staff, volunteers, any partners, or any customers? What support do you think you might need? Any training, funding, advice, research, or partnerships? And it's always good to pop a target date on this so that you're, in a way, held accountable for taking these first steps, contacting the people, and looking for the support before you go into piloting this. So I'm going to set the timer again for a couple of minutes. Again, this is a exercise that I'd like you to do on your own because it's specific to your business. So take a couple of minutes. I'll set a timer here just to start thinking about these. I'm happy for you to jot these boxes down within the workbook if you want to, or on a separate piece of paper if you wanted more time to work on it after the session. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to have a look at the chat again, just to revisit anything that I might have missed whilst you're working through that. Thanks for the information there, Liz, with VAT. Thank you for popping that in there for the rest of the attendees. Yeah, there's talking about VAT exemption there. I'm not an accountant, I'm not a VAT specialist. But from my previous experience of running social enterprises and businesses, when it comes to food businesses, you can be exempt for, let's say, for example, you are a takeaway. And I'll give you the example of a hot sausage roll. Now, if you serve that sausage roll cold, it is not VAT exempt. But if you serve it hot as a takeaway, it is exempt from VAT. So if you come into this today from a food business, that might be quite specific to you. But in terms of the example that I put on about the community kitchen, some of their areas of work was VAT exempt, because obviously once your turnover goes over the threshold of £90,000 in the rolling 12-month basis, then it's something that you're going to have a chat with your accountant about in terms of VAT registration and what that looks like for your business. But there are some exempt areas within VAT. My best piece of advice to you there is to speak to your accountant and get them to advise you on, what is VATable and what isn't, based on your business. Yeah, nice point there. Thanks, Sarah, about testing and learning. Works well to demonstrate viability to funders. Yeah, and that's what I was saying there in that last box. Just make sure that if you're going to pilot anything, just collect as much evidence as you can. It's always best to go a little bit like overkill and take loads of photos and speak to the participants, get their feedback, put together a case study, get your financial documentation in place in terms of costs and income. And then when you do go to any grant funders, then you can, it just makes your position a lot stronger if you've got a lot of information available to kind of prop that idea up. Okay, so thank you for taking final reflection piece here, turning ideas into action. So let's move on then. So hopefully these are some of the key takeaways that you have had from the session this morning. I realise it's been quite a quick whistle-stop tour through them all. I probably could have spent the whole afternoon with you going into a lot more detail. But that's why I put the workbook together, because at least you can take that away from the session. And the workbook has a lot of things in there that allows you to revisit the conversations that we've had today. And you'll also have access to the presentation if you wanted to go through it again. But the workbook is there really to help you form that kind of pilot stage and move things forward. So what have we learned today then? So we've gone through diversification being about resilience. So it's not simply about generating more income. It is about reducing risk and strengthening your sustainability within the business. Opportunities, once you start doing that mapping exercise and looking around, and I can see some of you have started thinking that way in the chat today, the opportunities often already exist. So, many diversification opportunities build on existing skills, knowledge, assets and relationships and experience. The community kitchen, I keep going back to that, but it is a good case study to have in this session because it shows you that all they really did was map what they already had and diversified from opportunities that were already around them in terms of the skills and the knowledge they had, the assets, the relationships and the experience that they had within the business. Start small and test the ideas. So, successful diversification rarely happens overnight. It does need that time and that effort putting into it, but it also is really strengthened by having the pilots and the tests in place and gathering all that information to make an informed decision as to whether it is, successful or not and worthwhile for you to run longer term within the business. So yeah, small plans, practical experiments can help reduce risk and build confidence. I think we've picked up on that in the chat, haven't we? And, I'm sure that you'll go away from this session thinking that not every idea is the right idea. Good opportunities need to be aligned with your mission as a business. They need to be supported by demand. So when you're doing your mapping, you will see if there's a demand for something that you don't already do for the groups of customers or indeed a new group of customers that's served by your business. And you also need to make sure that they're realistic to deliver. You have to make sure that you've got the staffing in place, the income to cover any downfall in the first few months, and that they are financially things are key takeaways from the session. And also, the most important outcome from today, hopefully, is that I've helped you to start thinking about and identifying a practical next step. And always keep in mind that action creates momentum. And hopefully this morning's session has been the first step of action for you towards creating that momentum. So that brings my session to an end. How are we looking time-wise? 12:15, that's good, an hour and 10 minutes. I haven't gone over, which is good, because I could probably talk all afternoon about this subject. But I'm happy now to go back to the chat and see if there's any questions that I missed in the last few minutes, and open it up to you guys if you've got any questions for us to have a little look through.
Thank you, Rob. That's been brilliant. Thank you. There's a couple of comments in there it might be worth going back to. So Helen's said that she'd like to expand her nature education business and become a kick, but need the right people involved. And she just wanted to know how Come started again, if you could just recap that. And then earlier on, I think there's a comment from Christine about just being stuck with all classes full and a waiting list, wants to diversify, but there's only one of her. So how does she achieve that? So I just wondered if, because we've got so many people in the room today, if you're willing or anyone else willing, we could maybe have a think about that one after. So do you want to maybe recap the come point first for Helen?
Yeah, so how did they start? So they started when I first met them back in 2020. We were in COVID time, so we were doing everything on Zoom and everything was digital. It was a strange time. They were a small group of 3 volunteers who were working in the local food bank, and they had a desire to do more for the local area. And we, within Social Business Wales, I'm sure some of you have had support, but for those of you that haven't, we offer advice and support in and around governance, good governance, legal structures. And they came on the journey with us at Social Business Wales, and we took them through all the training elements that we do. And they came to the conclusion that a CIC was the best model for them, because they were really specific about their community of interest, and they liked that the community interest company allowed them to have the community benefits statement within the CIC 36 form, and it allowed them to have that kind of checked on an annual basis where they did their accounts. So they started as a group of 3 volunteers. They then looked for other directors, and when they registered the CIC, they became a board of 6, and they're currently now 6 years on, a board of 9. And they were lucky because the food bank used the business centre that they're now kind of housed in. They used that as a drop-off and pick-up point. So they were already working within that building, and they had a good working relationship with the landlord of that building, which was the local authority. So it was quite a good working relationship. And I think the local authority, it was one of those buildings that they didn't have much use for. So I think they were quite happy that a third sector organisation was able to take it on and turn it into the success that it has become over the last 6 years. And yeah, it was, it's been 6 years really of advice and guidance from ourselves at Social Business Wales, in terms of we helped them with their business planning, their funding strategy. We registered the CIC for them. We provided training for their directors. Back then, we did have different funding streams. So we had a more healthy budget where we were able to bring in external consultants to help with piloting things and looking at the mapping exercise. We had that done externally because we had that pot of funding at that time in 2021 for them. But yeah, the journey has been supported by lots of different organizations, lots of different funders. Does that answer your question, or do you want me to go into more detail in terms of the next steps that they took?
I think it's fine. Yeah, she says that's great, thanks, and she's going to get in touch with us. Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you for that. Shall we do you want to have a look at Christine's query there? And we could maybe, there may be
Yeah.
people who have got suggestions for Christine as well. I know some people have been putting their ideas in the chat. I'd make the most of it today.
Yeah, just very quickly, Helen, if you get in touch with the SBW inquiries team, how we do it now is we have 3 one-to-many sessions. So you'll be asked to fill out an application form, and then you'll work with our brilliant administration team, and there'll be 3 sessions that you'll go to, which will look at things like legal structures, governance, being a director, if you're at the very new start stage. And then you'll come on, depending on where you are in Wales, you'll then be assigned a business consultant that's fairly local to you, and they will then work with you on a more one-to-one basis. But the starting point will be to attend 3 of those one-to-many sessions. But if you get your query in, the team will get in touch with you and they'll send you the link for the application form.
So maybe at this point, Rob, if you want to, we could stop sharing the presentation. If you want to put your camera on, it's up to you.
Thought I'd come out of that there. I got engrossed in the chat there. I apologize. There we are. I'm back. I didn't lose you through the session as well. I'm really pleased about that.
Hooray, fantastic. That's
So
great.
what was the next question,
Yeah,
Elizabeth?
so Christine's, sorry, it was a bit hard to see because there was a lot of there was a lot of comments about Cindy's the nursery query. So Christine, is it Tai Chi? Well, anyway, she's here. She can tell us, but classes are all full, and she's got a waiting list. She wants to diversify, but there's only one of her. So where to start? I mean, we could look at this as a group exercise. Up to you, Rob. You have a go.
Yeah, Christine, do you want to tell us a little bit more about your business, and then everyone else can, if you've got any experience, anybody else on the call that wants to jump in and help Christine with advice there.
Thank you. Yeah, lovely. Yes, the business is the Tai Chi side of it, the mindfulness side of the class is doing so well, and people are really benefiting from it. And I've been asked to do so much more. I can't do more on my own. 6 classes a week, plus sort of trying to keep up with the business, and moving forward is impossible for just myself. I can't split myself into enough bits to deal with it all. There's lots of things I would like to do, but I just need more people. Classes can't be run by unqualified people, and it costs about £360 odd to do the training, pass the exam. But it's not the cost, but it's getting the right people involved to do that. I did have one that I paid for her to teach, and she just left me high and dry and changed her mind after I paid for her, which I can't afford to go down that route very often. So finding the right people to step in and take a bit of the load off me so that we can move forward into more areas would be amazing. I just don't know how to do it at the moment.
Okay. Can I ask Christine, what's your legal structure? Are you registered social enterprise, or
Yeah, social enterprise.
are you a CIC or a company limited by guarantee?
No, not a CIC. No, I didn't go down that route.
Okay, what structure are you then? Are you a company limited by guarantee or a charitable structure?
Yes, company limited by guarantee. It's my
Okay.
directors and myself, and my directors are not involved in the business as such, so they don't understand. They say, or do more things, contact the NHS and see if you can get a foothold in there teaching. I can't do it. They don't understand that I cannot split myself into any more bits. Tai Chi is a thing that you have got to be in the right mindset to deliver. I've got to be cool, calm, and capable and collected, standing in front of a class. I can't do that if I'm frazzled and trying to do too much. So it's sort of Yeah, I, I just don't know where to go. I'm stuck. I'm really stuck.
What I would say, if you were my clients and this conversation was on a one-to-one basis between, a business consultancy conversation, what I would say is it's probably a good time to start looking at your board of directors. So maybe bringing in other members of the board that have got different skill sets that'll help you fill in the gaps and support you. As you said there, obviously the directors you've got are hands off, did you say, currently? So
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's worth having a conversation with the people that you've got there and see if they can do more to support you with, whether it's diversification or new markets, working with the NHS, then that allows you to still deliver those sessions, but bring in, if that conversation doesn't go well with the other directors, then it might be worthwhile you looking at bringing in new people, but do an audit of the skills of those people. So almost in a way, be a little bit selfish on who you take on as director. So take people with the right skill
Yes.
sets that you need to fill the gaps to help you. So you have to be a little bit selfish, really. And that would be a good starting point, I would say. Obviously, diversification, this session has been all about that this morning, but it only works when you're ready and that you've got the right people around you. There's no point doing it when you're overstretched, because it'll just fall by the sort of sidelines and it just becomes too much work. But I would say that's probably a starting point. Where are you based, Christine?
In Llethley.
I
work in Llethley House. I teach in Llethley House, and I also teach at home as well.
Okay. Have you had support from Social Business Wales? Are you a client?
Compass. I've been involved with Compass, but I haven't had any sort of one-to-one mentoring or that I would have found really beneficial, because I know a lot about mental health, Tai Chi, and physical health. That is my forte. I do not know about business. I know nothing about business, and I've sort of dipped my toe in the water, got it going, got it successful, got a tremendous business going, but the business side of it, I'm finding really, really difficult.
Okay, what I would say then is, can we share the application form, Elizabeth, with Christine? Might be worthwhile you getting onto the Social Business Wales system and to be assigned a business consultant that's fairly local to you. And maybe a few one-to-one meetings would help you, I think, to be able to target the work that you need to do. Would that be beneficial for you, do you think? A good outcome
I think so.
from the discussion?
Probably. Yes. I'm open to any ideas. I feel I can't move forward at the moment. I'm just sort of, I'm like the proverbial duck, I'm all serene and calm on the top and I'm paddling like mad underneath.
Bear with me 1 second, guys. What I will do then, because I'm seeing a few of you saying there about Social Business Wales, what I'll do is I'll grab the link now and I'll pop it in the chat so that you've all got it.
I was just looking for it, Rob. It's probably on the Padlet already, the link to our website. I just checked the right link is there because the application's slightly different. Some people will already be clients that are on the call. They just might not have seen their advisor recently. So um, I I don't know whether they would have to go through the 3 workshops again.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, if you're active clients, then I would say no. But we've got 2 different routes for applications. So if you're a pre-start, I'll pop this link in now. Bear with me. So this first link I'm going to share is the sort of new start and pre-start application form. If you're a non-client, I would suggest that you fill this one out. And then the second link that I'm going to put in is for established businesses. So if you are already incorporated and have been for a number of years and are trading, then if you fill out this second link, if you're a non-client, if you are a client and you feel that this conversation has brought up a few things that you want to reconnect with your business consultant, then please do get in touch with them. They'll probably shoot me down for doing that, for giving them more work. But if you've got their email address and their mobile number, get in touch with them and have a chat with them if there are things that you want to discuss. Did anybody want to add anything to Christine's question there in the rest of the group? Any other things that I've missed? happy for you to unmute and we'll have a chat about it. Makes it a bit easier, doesn't it?
Can I just say to Christine, keep going because you're doing very well, and don't lose faith because it'll all be okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Philippa.
I did say in a message, I'm only an hour away from Llanelli. I'm up in Carmarthenshire. So if you did want to just meet and have a chat about things, I've been running my CIC for about 5 years now. Happy to do that. I don't know if we can send emails or something, email addresses
That
after
would
the
be
call.
wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, just you, if you want to swap email addresses, happy to be to use the chat, really, because any other questions before I'm conscious that we're drawing quite quickly towards 12:30, and that was a quick whistle-stop tour through the session. I hope it was useful for you, and I hope that you've at least got something from it. My email address was on the presentation, and I'm happy for you to come back to me if you've got any questions that you think about after the session that you wanted to raise. But anything else anybody wanted to go over?
That's great, Rob. Thank you so much for that. We've put a poll there if anyone's got time just to put in if, oh, you are doing already. Brilliant. Thank you. Just to see if you think you'll be able to take some steps or not, so, and reflecting on it. Thank you for that. I just try and record that. And yeah, we've saved the chat. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Thanks, everyone. It was really good to get a load of good interaction there. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Rob. That was brilliant.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Right, thank you. Let's end the recording.